This fresh coat of the startup life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexio Series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio Series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio Series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio Series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, I am the proud dad of 2 daughters, and one of the things I really hope for them is to, go out into the world and chase their dreams, set their own destiny, however they, choose to decide it. And that's why we have a fantastic guest to make sure I'm doing my part to put them on the right track to do exactly that. She is the founder and president of Kathy Caprino, LLC, which is a premier career success and executive leadership development coaching consulting firm dedicated to the advancement of women in business worldwide. She has been a featured contributor on women's careers and leadership for Forbes, the Huffington Post, and LinkedIn, where she has nearly 1 million followers and more. She is also the author of The Most Powerful You, 7 bravery boosting paths to career bliss. She is the one and only Kathy Caprino. KC, how are you, ma'am?
Oh, Dominic, so great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
No worries. And as always, like we ask all of our guests, are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today?
I'm ready. Raring to go here.
Let's do it. So first things first, Kathy, if you don't mind, just kind of share your origin story and your background a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'd love it. All right. Long story short, very long story.
Okay.
I had an 18-year corporate career in marketing and publishing and membership services. And on the outside, Dominic, people would say that was a successful career, making good money,
Absolutely.
Staff, global initiatives. On the inside, though, it was not successful. And when I hit 40, and that was quite a long time ago now, those bumps turned into full-blown crises.
Right.
So I faced things that you hear about, but you don't think they're going to happen to you. Sexual harassment, gender discrimination, toxic colleagues, narcissistic bosses, zero work-life balance, chronic illness. I had something called an infection of the trachea, tracheitis,
right.
Which was so painful every 3 months for 4 years. And nobody could figure out how and why. But honestly, worse than all of that, Dominic, was waking up and saying, is this the work I'm going to be doing for my life? It felt, I would say, just so meaningless, not positive, not contributive. And I also was getting my, tush kicked
Right.
all along the way.
Right.
So part of my story is that, at 41 with 2 little kids, I thought, well, what am I going to do here? I don't want to do this career anymore, but what the heck am I going to do? And now that I'm a career coach, I know that so many people struggle with this. They feel like if they're going to change, they're going to lose everything. So I didn't change. I didn't make a change until 1 month after 9/11, I was laid off in a way that was just brutal to my ego. I just snapped and said, I'm done with this.
Right.
And in a fateful conversation, I'm sitting in my therapist's office crying about it, and he said, I know this looks like the worst crisis you've ever faced, but from where I sit, it's the first moment you can choose who you want to be in the world.
Right.
Now, who do you want to be? And I blurted out, I want to be you. And we laughed. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, I want to help people, not hurt people and be hurt.
I hear that.
And from that conversation, I became a marriage and family therapist. And then I found coaching. And for 15 years, I've been focused on professional women's issues, which in my view, women are facing different kinds of challenges than men in entrepreneurial life, in corporate life. So that's my world now. That's my world. And, why we're talking today is this new book that's coming out. If I could tell that story for briefly.
Absolutely.
I started to see, Dominic, that no matter who was coming to me, and I've worked with thousands of women, and some are making $1 million, some are making 20,000. They're from all different countries, all different walks of life, socioeconomic, educational, different fields, but they were bringing the same kinds of challenges over and over. And about 2 years ago, I said, what's happening here? I wanted to answer this question. What are these women missing in their life and work that they're coming for help about? And number two, what am I giving them through the process of coaching? And here's the answer, Dominic. It's bravery and power.
I hear that.
They were missing bravery and power. So the book is about the 7 damaging power gaps that professional women face and how we overcome them.
Absolutely. And I'm glad thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you for being transparent. I really appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. Like I said, I have 2 daughters, and I want the absolute best for them. Right. And I want them to grow up and chase their dreams, like I said, and define life on their terms and stuff like that. And I have to have these moments. I mean, I have my wife, and she's able to kind of explain certain things, but it's like as a dad, I kind of want to be that advocate for them. And so that's why I'm definitely glad to have you on the show and to have your book. And that book, once again, Startup Nation, is The Most Powerful You, 7 Bravery Boosting Paths to Career Bliss. And that book is out today, Startup Nation. We have a link there in the show notes. If you listen to the replay on the podcast, I wanted to ask you really quickly about some of the chapters that you have in the book. One of them was, the reluctance to ask for what you want. Kind of talk about, that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting that you choose that. But before I talk about that, how old are your daughters, Dominic?
My daughters are 8 and 12.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. What amazing ages. And I'm really glad that we can talk about this for them and
Absolutely.
for other, women in your life. And I have to just hug you up and applaud you that, there are so many men who work with women, who lead women, who manage women, who do need to know this information, right? And this is you. But if you talk about power gap number 3, reluctance to ask for what you deserve. So I did a power gap survey. There's qualitative information. There's a lot of information that comes from speaking to people.
Right.
But I wanted to understand, what are the numbers here? And when I did this survey, and almost 1,000 women have taken it around the world, I shared each gap, and they said yes, maybe, or no to experiencing them. 77% said, I have this gap. And let me talk about it a little bit.
Sure.
What women who have this gap often say is something like, I'm not sure I even deserve more. But if I do, I don't know how to ask for it. So in the book, it's not just me talking. I feature a woman who I know who's a client or a course member who's overcome the gap, and also experts on these topics. So the amazing thing is, I read a research study once that right out of MBA school, 57% of men negotiated their first salary.
Right.
And 7% of women negotiated their first salary. 7% versus 57%.
Right.
So what you've got is kind of truly a cultural problem here. And I want to share that there are reasons that women experience these gaps. We don't pop out of the womb having these challenges.
Right.
One of the reasons is, and this is not to bash men in any way, but this is to just speak very real. We live in a patriarchal culture.
We do.
Where in corporate America, for instance, and certainly in leadership levels, it's predominantly male.
Right.
And in a patriarchal culture, what we tend to do is have very rigid ideas of what the masculine and what the feminine is. The masculine, for instance, is strong, not vulnerable, dominant, assertive. They get things done. The feminine, and of course I'm using quotes around these words, the way we project our ideas about what feminism, or what being a feminine person is vulnerable, accommodating, pleasing, malleable, not forceful, not assertive. So what the research shows, and I talk about it in the book, is at about age 13, 12 or 13, Dominic, girls start going underground. Before that, they were on par with boys in terms of thinking of themselves as leaders, raising their hands to answer questions, being interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, even thinking they could be astronauts or do anything. But starting at age 12 or 13, girls start to go underground. They don't think of themselves as leaders as much. They don't raise their hands to offer their opinions as much.
Right.
And they become more concerned with their body image, and social media pressure is more daunting for them than boys.
Right.
So what happens then is, in asking for what you deserve, I have a theory about this.
Okay.
There's research that shows that women have a higher level of emotional intelligence and they can read emotional cues better. Well, when we're about to ask for a raise, for instance, often your boss doesn't really like that question. Your boss doesn't really want to give you a raise often, if there are budgetary constraints or even asking for a promotion. It's awkward. Well, my theory is if women have these intensely, high sensitivity to emotional cues, and we are also trained to be pleasing and accommodating, it's going to be harder for us to ask for what we deserve and talk about why we deserve it. So, the book really outlines why we have these challenges and what we can specifically do. Here's one tip. If you think you deserve something more, and this can even be asking for help from your spouse. I mean, during the pandemic, we're seeing that, women are still doing the majority of domestic responsibilities, even while they're working and even if they're primary breadwinners.
Right.
So to get over this gap, here's a tip. Build a case for it. With data, with facts. If you want a raise or a promotion or you want your spouse to do more, you have to build a case for why this is necessary and how it's going to help the whole ecosystem when this change is made. And so we get out of the realm of it being emotional, and it's really fact-based and data-based. Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I remember me and my 12-year-old, we had a conversation about this very thing where I think we had some cinnamon rolls or something here at the house. And, she wanted some extra icing on her cinnamon roll. And I can see that she wanted extra icing, but for the life of me, she would not ask for the extra icing. And I was like, look, if there's something you want, just ask for it. I mean, if the answer may be yes, the answer may be no, but I don't ever want you to be afraid to ask. So I'm so glad that you shared that value with us.
Wow. You know what that says to me too? You sound like a great dad. One, I know that you're paying attention. You're seeing that she wanted more. A lot of, men and women, parents, fathers and mothers are so busy, we're not really attending to the internal life of our kids. I spent some time as a marriage and family therapist working with parents, and wow, it was really eye-opening. And I have two kids, 22 and 25 right now.
Gotcha.
So I've lived through this, but you know what we can do as parents? When we see our child holding back, and it occurs to you, gosh, they don't want to ask. You could even say, I'm sensing you want this, whether it's icing or you want to go out for that sports team or whatever it is.
Right.
You might even say, so that they can start understanding their own internal fears and blocks. You could say, tell me what you're really wanting, and you create a safe space. And then when they say it, you validate that they deserve to ask for that, just as you did. But you might even say also, I sensed you held back. Can you tell me why?
I hear that.
Can you tell me more about that? And so in that way, you're learning more about their internal state and they're learning more about their internal state.
Got you. Thank you for sharing.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
I appreciate that because I think, because me and my 12-year-old, we talk a lot and we talk about what's going on in the world. We talk about the Me Too movement. We talk about those things. And I ask her, how can I, as your dad, advocate for you and what you want and how you want to, go, in life. And so it was just one of those opportunities where I saw,
how wonderful
the connection between our conversation and this moment with these cinnamon rolls. And so, I just want, I want her to define life on her terms, because I think one of the biggest issues I have, and I know, and I get called on my, my maleness, as we like to call it around here from time to time, and we have an open and safe space for us to do that. Because there are times where I don't know. And I say,
exactly.
let me know. But no, there are times when I get called out on it, and I want to be called out on it. But because Dominic. I think it's very important for my daughters to see that, that we're all equal, and that, just because if me being assertive and if you being assertive doesn't make you something else, which, women get often called when they try to be assertive a lot of times. So,
I have so much to comment on. First of all, you're an amazing dad, and thank you for doing that.
I try.
And what you say is so true. Look, everyone has biases.
Right.
Everyone. This is how the brain works. It's
Right.
how it filters information. But what, I learned in therapy training, greater awareness equals greater choice. You can't change something that you're not aware of. So How wonderful that you're asking your family to, listen, point out things where you think I might have a bit of a blind spot, and hopefully you can do that for them too, because we all have that. That's just so wonderful. I'm so glad to hear it.
For sure. Thank you for saying, and I appreciate. I try. It's everyday learning. You know what I mean? It's just learning and growing every day. I appreciate you sharing that for sure. I wanted to ask you this, because one of the things I found interesting in your book is that at the end of each chapter, you have not only do you have creating a power shift, if you will, those parts, but I think the one of the things I found very interesting was the internal exploration that leads to external actions. Talk about why you put that in your book and at the end of your chapters.
Oh, wow. Nobody's asked that yet. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
So one thing I learned, again, I learned it all in therapy training, is that insight doesn't change our lives necessarily. It's action that changes our lives.
Right.
So a lot of people have said, good grief, I've read 2,000 self-help books. Why do I still have the same problem that I have? And I say a lot of things about that. But one thing is, one thing I'd love the listeners to know, you are basically what your childhood taught you to be, unless you unlearned that. So there's so much that you learned in coping with and living with your family of origin that is probably still with you, unless you've looked at it and said, does this still support me? So often, honestly, I can look at someone on LinkedIn in about 5 minutes, 3 minutes. I can see more about their career than they know I can see.
Gotcha.
About, are they hiding? Are they embarrassed to really talk about what they're great at? Do they know how to paint a picture of who they are above and beyond just their job? But back to your question. The reason we can watch self-help stuff or read self-help stuff and not change is because you have to then take action, unlike any action you've ever taken, to become braver and more powerful. And I did want to talk about that for a second.
Please.
But why I talk about internal exploration and external action is, if you just randomly go out and start taking action, I don't know, I never get promoted, I'm going to just start doing this.
Right.
What you're probably not understanding is that you are potentially co-creating what's happening to you. I mean, I've lived all of this, Dominic.
Right.
I've had a lot of bad bosses and a few wonderful ones. But when I was in a period of no matter what job I had, I'd have a bad boss, a mean boss, a toxic boss, somebody who steals my ideas. And I thought, what is happening here? It can't be random.
Right.
So thankfully, my friend said, I love you, but how can every boss be bad? Maybe some therapy would help. And I was so hurt, but I went and got it. And what I saw is I do struggle with authority, and that's from my childhood. And if I struggle with it and I'm resistant to it, maybe the boss is going to be pushing harder on me than maybe if I were different with the boss. So what you want to do is get to know yourself intimately around these power gaps in general.
Right.
And then take brave action that is going to address that blind spot or that power gap.
Gotcha.
That's why I think we need both of those things.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Were you about to say something else? I'm sorry.
I did want to thank you
sure.
wow, you're really in tune to clues. I mean, into emotional cues. That's amazing. It's amazing to me to hear that. Wow. But yeah, I did want to say for people that are thinking, well, what is bravery and what is power? Can I define that, Dominic?
Absolutely.
Would that be
please.
helpful? In my view, bravery is the courage to look at what is not working in your life and taking accountability to change what you can change. And power is being able to be that change agent, to have impact, to have influence, to be able to change your own life and do those things that are going to shift things, as well as uplifting others in the process. That's what I view power to be. And interestingly, women have said to me, I don't want power. This is another thing to ask your daughter when they get a little older. And I say, why don't you want power? And they say, because power is abused.
Right.
So what I say to that is, I love this quote from Shakespeare, nothing is but thinking makes it so. Power is not in and of itself abusive. It's who's wielding it.
Right.
And how they're wielding it. So don't shun power. We need it. We need to be impactful. We need to be influential. But you're going to use it in a way that uplifts people, not as a weapon.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that's something we talk about. We always talk about other different things, but like there are certain things that are just tools and they can be wielded certain ways. And a lot of times with even power, it has a negative stigma because we've seen time and time and time again how people use that power. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And even if we look at social media, it's, as you said, I've got a big following on LinkedIn,
Right.
And LinkedIn's a relatively calm and professional and respectful platform.
Right.
But, there have been a few times I did a post on what is feminism and why do so many men and women hate it.
Right.
And I did a video on that. Oh my gosh. I got so much vitriolic hate, Dominic.
Right.
I had two different men say, shut up, you dumb T-word.
Okay.
T-word.
Right.
And, hatred, rage. So, we live in a world where so much around us is shared on a tweet or anonymously on social media, and people forget that there's a person on the other end of this.
Right, for sure. Well, and let me ask a follow up to that, because most people, many people are on social media and they put stuff out there and it's not received a certain way, even when it, if it's like feminism or whatever the case may be. How do you coach your clients through that? Because that can be kind of devastating from time to time.
This was quite a while ago, and I remember I had not put stuff on YouTube like that before. And my grown daughter came in and said, Mom, what do you think's going to happen? It's YouTube. It's uncensored. It's unfiltered. Whereas on my Forbes blog or LinkedIn, who's saying it. Right. So, on YouTube, there's zero accountability because they're fake profiles in many cases. Right. But let's talk about, let's ratchet it back and talk about not hateful feedback, but when you get, your butt kicked, which if you're saying anything important, I'm sure, Dominic, it's happened to you.
Absolutely.
Someone's going to disagree.
Absolutely.
And people are going to do it in a way that can hurt. I say this, if you want to say anything important, you're going to make someone mad. That's part of it. Now, do you need to accept that kind of terrible slapdown or hatred? Absolutely not. And so, it doesn't happen much anymore. I don't know why. Maybe because I have a big following, people don't want to appear, whatever. But if someone does make a comment that's hateful, here's what I would recommend. And we see this in political conversations.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of us have friends and family who are on a different political, have a different political view.
Right.
Choose your battles. So if the person seems open to a dialogue, not just hating on you, then, you know, as you said earlier, I want to learn, you know, Black Lives Matter really, it matters to me, and I want to learn how maybe what I'm doing has a bias that I'm not seeing.
Right.
And I've had some people reach out to me and say, listen, Kathy, we appreciate this, but blip, blip, blip.
Right.
If I feel like I can learn from this person and there can be a dialogue of respect, I will go for it. But if you know that this person just wants to hate on you and is just rageful against all women or all Democrats or all Republicans or all whatever,
right,
then don't do it. It's a waste of your precious, precious life and time to engage in a dialogue where really the person just wants to hate.
For sure.
What do you think?
No, I agree with that, because I actually made a post recently that kind of, look, of that same vein, where I was like, look, this is what it is. Look, I extended an olive branch to people on social media, because like you said, I have friends on social media who are all across the spectrum, black, white, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, wherever the case may be. And I was like, look, I'm extending an olive branch. I'll have a conversation about, if something that you disagree with me and stuff like that. This is what I believe. And I just laid it out. 1, I believe this. 2, I believe this. 3, I believe this.
Oh, I want to read that.
And so I just just had, like I say, we can have a conversation. We don't have to do it here. We can do it over the phone. We can do it over Zoom, private, no cameras. Cause that's another thing. A lot of times people, in this world of cancel culture and stuff like that, people want to show people up a little bit. I was like, nah, I'm not trying to do this. I respect you as a human being. We can have this conversation. And the fact that I'm reaching out to you is letting you know that I respect you as a human being. And at the end of the day, we can't be friends anymore. I get it. I understand, but just know that I tried. And so that's how I try to, myself personally try to, handle things like that, and it went over okay. But like you said, you're going to have about, this is what I believe. I believe most people, when there's, a conversation, civil, this, that, and the other can be reasoned with. That's what I believe. Call it naive or whatever the case may be. Yeah. I believe that. The other 10%, 5%, you were never going to reach them. You just was never going to reach them regardless. And like you said, like, don't even bother trying to waste your precious time, because if they're going to hate, they're going to hate. And there's nothing you can do about it. So, but no, I definitely agree with everything you just said, Kathy. Thank you for sharing that.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life.
This fresh coat of the Startup Life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexio Series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio Series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. is 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio Series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio Series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you. This episode of The Startup Life is sponsored by SaveTheChildren.org. Startup Nation, Save the Children believes every child deserves a future. In the United States and around the world, they work every day to give children a healthy start in life, the opportunity to learn, and protection from harm. They deliver lasting results for millions of children, including those hardest to reach. They do whatever it takes for children every day, and in times of crisis, transforming their lives and the future we share. Startup Nation, right now, the coronavirus is the biggest global health crisis in our lifetime. It threatens children in every way. COVID-19 has already left many children without caregivers, out of school, and exposed to violence and exploitation. Child poverty is rising. With your support, we can help children in unsafe households and help support distance learning in the face of school closures. Here are some ways your support can make a difference. For just $5, you can buy a baby's first book, providing comfort and inspiring lifelong learning. And for $25, you can serve a nutritious breakfast and lunch to 5 out-of-school children in need. And there's many other ways you can help support Startup Nation. So go to SaveTheChildren.org/SaveKids or www.savethechildren.org/SaveKids. So if you're ready to make a difference, Startup Nation, remember SaveTheChildren.org. Make the change for children.
The Startup Life is powered by Ladder. Startup Nation, as an entrepreneur, you are the engine that powers your business. We have had many entrepreneurs on the show, from those that played Division II basketball, quite a few Ironman participants, and even an NFL quarterback. And the one thing they all have in common is that they know getting early morning workout wins leads to business success for the day. However, it's super important what fuel you use for your workout to get that early morning success. And that's where Ladder comes in. Ladder is a sports nutrition company founded by LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unlike other supplements, every batch is tested by a third party that is trusted by all major professional sports organizations, including the NBA, NFL, MLB, and more, to verify the highest standards for quality, but more importantly, safety. Ladder's goal is to help you unlock your best in any situation. Right now, that means access to special offers and expert advice from their community. Personally, I like superfood greens. Not only does it include the most essential nutrients that are hard to get in your diet, like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and vitamin D, they also included the Rodelio root, which helps keep you healthier when stress is high, but also it helps support immunity according to many studies. Use code BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off everything site-wide at ladder.sport. That's BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off at ladder.sport. So maybe you're not trying to be a 4-time league MVP or a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but you still need the tools to elevate your health that elevates your business. So go with Ladder and prepare to get better every day. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life.
Once again, we're talking to Kathy Caprino, the author of The Most Powerful You, 7 Bravery Boosting Paths to Career Bliss. I want to ask one more question about the book before we kind of take a shift here, because there's a story in there that I thought was pretty good. And this is in the part of the book where you talk about allowing past trauma to kind of, define who you are and stuff like that, right? And there's this story about Cheryl, and she's telling the story of her grandmother, Josephine, who was one of those Rosie the Riveters during World War II. Can you kind of share with us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. And Cheryl's story, Dominic, is so riveting.
Right.
And I wonder, can I talk for a second about her story?
Please do. Yes.
Too? So this chapter, I want everyone to know, is about how, in my view, everyone on this planet has had some type of pain or trauma. And therapists, I'm a former therapist, use the word trauma in ways maybe, non-therapists wouldn't. But what I mean by that is something that has happened that has gotten in and it doesn't let go, and it continues to shape you. And that can be, as serious as You're in war and you're watching your friend in front of you blow up in front of you. I mean, that
Right.
creates PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Of course.
But we can have that, trauma is on a spectrum. We can also have something like a friend betraying us, or our spouse betraying us, or our boss saying we're stupid, or a colleague stealing an idea from us and getting credit. We can have all sorts of trauma.
Right.
So what happens is, if we don't address that trauma and heal from it, it continues to affect us. So if your boss says you're stupid, and you might internalize, and a lot of it is, were you taught to believe you're stupid, but you might internalize that in a way where you never feel confident and smart again.
Right.
So that's what this chapter is about. But briefly, Cheryl Hunter, her story, and then I'll talk about her grandmother.
Sure.
Cheryl, and you got to go watch Cheryl's TED Talk, Wabi Sabi. Cheryl Hunter is her name, but she briefly shares in the book that she grew up as a cowgirl in Colorado, and she's beautiful, and she dreamt of being a model. And it was only ranches for miles and miles and miles around her, so she couldn't really connect with people the way she wanted to, and
Right.
she liked fashion. So she decided she was going to save up her money and go with her friend to Paris, where she wanted to become a model, where she thought she could be discovered. And I will make this brief, but it's absolutely heart-wrenching. They get off the plane, and a man comes up to her and says, "You are so beautiful, are you a model?" And she said no, but internally she hadn't told her friend, but she came to Paris, hopefully, she's 18, she's a kid,
Right.
to be discovered. And he said, "I can make you a model. There's my friend over there, and you see the man with the camera. We can make you a model." And he says, "Come with us." And I just can't even say it without crying.
Right.
And Cheryl turns to her friend and says, "I'm going to go." And her friend said, "Are you crazy? What are you talking about?" And she went. And what happened is they brutalized her
Right.
in every way you can imagine for 3 days, and then left her for dead in an abandoned park, I think it was. So what the story talks about, and really I hope everyone will read it, it's what she went through and how she felt so broken and dirty and ashamed.
Right.
And she went through an experience, and I want you to read it in the book,
Sure.
where she was taught that its imperfections don't make us terrible, they make us beautiful. It's our imperfections, our flaws, that make us special.
Right.
And she has turned that crisis into what she does today and has done for years, which is help people heal and also tell a different story about who they are. I mean,
Right.
wow.
Right.
So it is so inspirational, and that's what I'm talking about how we stop letting that trauma define us. And she talks about don't try to bounce backward, bounce forward, and
Right.
how brilliant. But she talks about her grandmother saying that it's steel that has been forged through the fire over and over and over. That's what makes it strong.
Right.
That we are able to, through these terrible things that could destroy us, that's the fire. And when we come through it on the other side, that's what makes us amazing and strong.
Okay.
And it's not something we should hide and consider our dirty little secret. It's what should make us proud of who we are.
Thank you for sharing that. That was an amazing story. And that's the type of anecdotes you get in the book, Startup Nation. Once again, that book is available now. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. Were you about to say something, Kathy? I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to thank you for letting me talk about that.
Oh, no, of course. So, we've been talking about the book, so I want you to actually talk about your podcast as well that you have going. Can I share with us a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you. It's called Finding Brave, and I started it because, truthfully, the term Finding Brave emerged because I had done my TEDx talk called Time to Brave Up.
Right.
And it's funny. This is a funny story for entrepreneurs who don't protect their intellectual property. Someone came in and trademarked Brave Up, And I was, and they had just been a coach for like a few months, and
Right.
I'd been doing this for years, and I was gutted. So I'm sure you've talked about how important it is to, legally and otherwise protect your IP.
Absolutely.
But I was, a few months later, I was in Greece co-hosting a women's retreat, and my dear friend, McDonald, I was telling her, she's a writer, and I said, someone took Brave up, and we were talking about names, and she said, what about Finding Brave? And we were in the bathroom, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. Because why that's so important to me is we don't just brave up once.
Right.
If we want to build an amazing life, an amazing career, an amazing business, you have to brave up basically every day, many times a day.
That's true.
You have to say things to people that you don't want to say. You have to build boundaries and say no. You have to protect yourself and protect your time. There's so many ways we have to find brave. So I said, let me start a podcast on this and let me talk to people who are rocking it like you do at very high levels, but also let me talk about the ways they have found brave.
Sure.
Because, it is in the stories of other people that help us really learn and dimensionalize what does it mean to be brave and find brave and be more powerful. So I think I'm on episode 133 now. So I've been doing this since January 2018. And I bet you feel the same way. It's wonderful to hear ourselves talk for a little while, but it gets boring, right? I mean,
right.
I'm bored with what I have to say half the time. Let me talk to other people that are doing amazing things that are inspiring and are also brave and positively powerful. So that's what the podcast is.
I hear that. And we have a link to that podcast, Startup Nation, there in the show notes as well for you to check out as well. And also, we talked earlier about some of the videos that you create, and you can find that Startup Nation also on kathycaprino.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. Back to the podcast really quickly. How has the podcast journey? Kind of talk about, like the first couple of episodes, leading up to launch day. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Oh, wow. I'd love to. So I think in the beginning, it was a long time ago, I did some solo podcasts, which for me is a very different thing than interviewing people.
For sure.
And I do have to say, I have a bit of a blessing advantage in that because I write on Forbes and have been doing that for 9 years, I honestly am pitched about 500 times a month, Dominic, of PR firms and authors, doing amazing things. So because I'm hearing from people who want to be featured in Forbes, I'm also able to say, wow, would you like to come on my podcast? So some of these people are so illustrious, very best-selling authors and top thought leaders. So that's amazing. But, in the beginning, I think this is true of anybody putting out new thought leadership. In the beginning, you kind of wonder, are people going to like this? Is this helpful? So I don't suffer from tremendous doubt about that because I've written for a long, long time. But I remember the first time I did my first Forbes post, I was scared to death. When the editor wrote, "Do you want your own blog?" I almost fell off my chair, and the answer inside of me was, "No, I don't have anything to say.
Gotcha.
I'm terrible. No." But of course, thank goodness, I got a hold of myself and said, "Yes, I do." And that was 9 years ago. But in the beginning with the podcast, you're, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, but you're finding your voice. You're finding your cadence, literally and figuratively. You're finding what do you really love talking about, right? And what's really going to grab people, and what do my listeners really want to hear? So in the beginning, you're finding yourself.
Right.
But then, for me, being able to speak to great people like you, to me, honestly, it's like LinkedIn for me is the cocktail party in the sky. It's like going to a cocktail party and talking to anyone around the world. That's what the podcast feels like. I feel like I'm having coffee or drinks or dinner with you. And you're over for dinner and we're talking about what matters most. So to me, it's so joyful. But it is work. We have to make sure that, we can't just blab on and on. We have to have a focus and know what we're covering. And so it's work, but if you like doing it, it's utter joy. Would
Absolutely.
you agree? I'd love to hear what you think.
I would definitely 100% agree. And it's funny that you're asking me this now because, like, Startup Nation, you probably know that we're getting ready to come across our 200th episode mark.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
I'm starting to, it's been a pretty amazing ride. So I'm
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm starting to get back in reflecting and the journey and, being reinvigorated about why we do this. Like you said, it's a journey. It's definitely some work. And a lot of times when I mentor people about podcasting, and I was like, look, this isn't something, before they start, I'm like, look, this isn't something that you just turn the microphone on and just start talking. Like, that's not what this is. I assure you.
I mean, some people's it is, but
right, for sure.
We won't go there.
Right, for sure. But but to be good and stand out and to get multiple pitches today. I've gotten to the point where I'm getting multiple pitches a day, getting about like 14, 15 pitches a day from people,
wow,
like PR people and stuff like that. So it's been crazy. You feel bad about turning some people down, but sometimes you kind of have to be a little selective. It's the nature of the business, but it's been a blast. But at the end of the day, I tell people this isn't my show. I do this show for the people that listen. True enough, I pay for the server, I find the guest and this, that, and the other, but it's not my show. It's my audience's show. And so my job is to serve them. And so hopefully I'm able to do that week in and week out. So,
I know you are doing that. I sure do. Would you also agree with this, Dominic? We don't do anything alone. We have support teams. That's another gap, just isolating from influential support.
Right.
You need great people around you who know more than you do. And
Absolutely.
I have an amazing podcast team, Matt Mawiney, who's his company is podassist.com. He is so brilliant at editing and pulling out great quotes.
Right.
He's gifted at it.
Right.
And I know a few people who are starting and they don't have the funds to pay for outside help. But it can get very beleaguering when you're doing all of it.
That's true.
If you're editing and doing the show notes and getting all the links. So if you are thinking of doing it, a person who can help you, who's gifted at those functions, is really important, I think.
No, that's very true. Like I said, if you can't afford that type of thing, a podcast team is like, it can be a lifesaver. Let's just put it that way. From, like you said, pulling out quotes and editing and stuff like that. Sometimes finding guests for you and stuff like that, if you have that apparatus in mind. But yeah, it can be like very life-saving. So I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this, Kathy, because as you know, we're kind of dealing with this pandemic and stuff like that. How are you keeping your sanity these days? What are you doing for fun to kind of not lose it, I guess?
What a question. I just heard from someone in the media who wants to talk about work-life balance. And so for me, to answer this personally, one thing that I'm fortunate about is I work from home, and I've worked from home for years. And I've been on Zoom before most people knew what Zoom was.
Right.
So my work has not changed in that way. And frankly, when this hit, I thought, well, there goes my business as a career coach, because who's going to be caring about their careers? And truthfully, Dominic, it's such a blessing, but I cannot keep up. I have a wait list now, because what happens when we hit a crisis, and I saw this after 9/11, it often makes people reevaluate everything.
Right.
Like, they realize life is precarious, and it is, a lot of the things we took for granted, we can't take for granted. So it makes people rethink what isn't working. So in that way, I'm busy and it's productive. But I want to tell you, I'm a social person, and I can get down. Like just the other day, I've never shared this publicly, but if I sit here and read too many headlines, I the other day I was just overcome with sadness for the world.
Right.
And sadness for who we've lost, sadness for the things that have been taken away from us, but also sadness at all the divisiveness and hate and the political traumas we're having, which makes pain even worse because we feel isolated and we feel angry too at the other faction. Right. So if I am not, I'm kind of an empath, so I feel things.
Right.
If I am not extremely careful about what I put into my mind and my heart, I can go down a rabbit hole of feeling sad. So, I've done a lot of research on and interviewed positive psychologists Michelle Gill and Sean Aker. They're amazing about how we can reshape our own happiness. It's not a set point. We can change it. We can change how much control we feel we have. So for me, I have to engage in processes that keep me grounded, that remind me of what I'm grateful for. And I was even talking to my sister today that the pandemic has been so horrible for so many people. And my own 96-year-old mother had COVID, Dominic. And she lives in Virginia in an assisted living place, and she's recovered now. I'll cut to the chase. She's tested negative. But I went through a period of thinking, am I going to lose my mother and not be able to say goodbye and have her pass to the other side alone? I can't bear it.
Right.
But, aside from the absolute tragedies that are happening, there are blessings in crisis.
Right.
I live with my son who graduated from college a year ago. He wouldn't be living with me if this weren't happening. He would have been on his own. And there is a blessing in it. I think we forged a kind of relationship that would never have so close, and we talk about so much and share so much, it probably wouldn't have happened that way without it. So to answer your question, I strive very hard not to go down the rabbit hole of the doom and gloom and try to hang on to what is positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think there every once in a while, because I think at the beginning for me, and I won't be long about this, at the beginning,
I want to hear.
For sure. I appreciate that. At the beginning, I, was like, I'm just going to double down on work. I'm just going to block it all out. And honestly, even that is not a good idea, Startup Nation. It's really
terrible,
not.
Right?
It's not a great idea. Because, true enough, you're blocking out the negative, but you're also blocking out the positive. So, while I was doubling down on work, I'm not going outside with my 8-year-old to go, blow bubbles in the front yard. Right? You know what I mean? So it's and so it got to a point where my 8-year-old was like, "Hey, Daddy, can I do a recording session?" It's like, "Why you want to do a recording session?" "So I can hang out with you." It's like, "You know what?
My goodness.
You know what? Yeah, okay." And so I did that recording session. I didn't think about recording the rest of the day. We went outside and we blew bubbles. And so I think, you got to find that healthy balance. You know what I mean? And so I think my family and trying to, make sure to kind of reaffirm us as a family and spending time like that has been super important, and to, important to kind of, I guess, relearn, if you will, because, you were talking about your mother. So glad that she recovered. I was listening to, another podcast where it was a young man was talking about he had COVID and he recovered, but, one of the people that was in the next bed to him in the ICU or something like that, he had COVID, and I guess it got to a point where he knew he was going to recover, and I'm trying to get emotional about this, but he knew he wasn't going to recover. And so he was trying to FaceTime with his family, because, you can't come see your family and this, that, and the other. And the call would not go through.
Come on.
And I was just like, that's rough.
That's so horrible.
That's rough. And so
this person is going to remember that for the rest of his life.
Right.
Sometimes we have survivor guilt. Why did I live in this? Right?
That's true.
Oh, wow.
That's true. And so I say all of that, Startup Nation, that hang out with your family. Remember what's important during these times, because, I know we talk about, building a business and the path of entrepreneurship, but as great as all of this is, there are things that are way more important than building a company, and for me, that's my family. That is definitely my family. I didn't mean for us to get that deep for us on the start of life.
I love it.
But
Can I add one thing to
yeah,
that?
please
Dominic,
do.
may
Yeah,
I?
absolutely.
In talking about work-life balance, I do think also that for some reason in American culture, we're just encouraged to work.
We are.
And I call it perfectionistic over-functioning. I talk about that in the book, doing more than is healthy, appropriate, and necessary, and trying to get an A+ in all of it, which is not necessary, right?
Right.
And a lot of people have driven behavior around fear that they're not enough if they don't do this. But I would also say, for me, family is the most important thing. And, resting and restoring yourself and having joy and having fun, especially in times like this, it's so essential. So, like an example for me is I'm back to playing tennis. I was a really good tennis player when I was in my youth, and I'm back to it now. And having a clinic to, Mondays at 6, it's in my calendar. And if I say I'm going to play doubles with 4 people and they are expecting me at the court, it's in my calendar. It's a commitment to myself.
Right.
So I want to leave people with this, make a commitment to have joy. Let's get over how Americans are trained that, it's shameful or humiliating or some embarrassing if you really want to just unplug and read a book or sit in nature or go for a swim or blow bubbles. We've got to get over this training that we've had that it's got to be all work. It's killing a lot of us.
That's true. That's very true. And like I said, that's something over the past what's this? 3 months now? 4 months now that I've been kind of like retraining, relearning myself. That and you said 2 things that stood out. One, make a commitment to unplug and stuff like that. But also, you don't have to have an A+ in everything. Right. That's important.
I mean, come on now. Half of it we can get a C in, and that's perfectly fine.
Right.
So definitely prioritize what matters most to you. Like your children. You don't want to get out of this and realize, I didn't spend any special time with them. You don't want that. And you realized that and you took action.
Absolutely, because it was definitely trending that way. It's like, nah, we're not doing this. We are not doing this for sure. I want to ask a quick follow-up question, kind of lighten the mood just a little bit, because you talked about, like in tennis, a pretty good tennis player. Who's a tennis player that, men's or women's, that you just absolutely in awe of these days?
It might be Serena.
Gotcha.
Actually, I've interviewed her, and everything she's been through.
Right.
From the difficulties in childbirth, and she really is a role model.
Absolutely. I've big Serena fan, huge Serena fan. Absolutely.
Oh, she's something else. You know what I love? Now that my son's living with me, I'm watching a lot more sports. Or before the pandemic, we all can't wait to see some sports coming down our way.
Right.
But I love it when athletes and any other person with a platform are role models in other ways.
Right.
That they're brave enough to take what they've done in terms of their amazing prowess in athleticism or whatever it is, and the way they live and the way they speak is something to role model. That's who I really love.
Absolutely. Definitely. You have this platform, and when you can affect change, you definitely, you can do something about that. I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Well, look, we'll go ahead and start wrapping up with you, Kathy. I know we really had an amazing conversation. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it, Dominic. Thank you for your insightful questions.
I try. I definitely try. I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you because there's somebody in Startup Nation, given everything that's going on, they're feeling a little discouraged, feeling a little down. Kind of give them some words of encouragement to take us out for today, if you don't mind, Kathy.
Oh, I'd love to. The very first thing is I want you to realize how amazing and talented you are. What I see is everyone is like a thumbprint, totally unique. And please remember that no matter what you're going through, you are so valuable and so special. And here's the deal, the world needs your talents. So I hope you will find brave and, access the bravery and power to bring yourself forward in the world. We need you and we need your talents. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. No, that's very helpful. And thank you so much, Kathy Caprino, for coming on the show. And that's going to wrap up this session of The Startup Life. And Startup Nation, remember, as always, if you have an idea, be about that life, The Startup Life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.